Sige sir,
Try
para
ko lang.
mas ma-navigate
Sir
niyo
Jeff, ano po ba yun? Screen sharing is yes with two, ano ba? Number 2, ano po? Which one? Don't show.
Jeff, live na po.
Ayun.
Naka-live na po tayo. Alright. Great afternoon once again. Okay, the day is still young. Pwede pa naman natin ipagpatuloy kahit na mayroon tayong mga interruptions na experience. And isa din yan sa mga na-experience ng ating mga estudyante, mga mag-aaral, mga teachers. At kami bilang nasa division office ay hindi excuse na ma-experience din ang mga ganito. At maraming salamat po sa inyo pong pag-unawa at pakikisa po no, sa mga ganito pong mga pangyayari. Para po sa mga hindi pa po nakapag-attendance or hindi po time in kahapon, ang ating pong HRD unit ay nagbigay ng mensahe pa daw pong magkaroon or mag-attendance po or mag-time in ngayong araw. Alright, so please take the opportunity to time in link and using the of course using the link and the QR code posted a while ago. And sure, let us call in once again our able resource speaker to talk about the interim guidelines on assessment and of course of the basic education learning continuity plan. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again, Sir Noel Ansiado. Magandang hapon po ulit, sir. Ako, pasensya na. Talagang lahat yata ay hindi excuse sa ganyan.
Good afternoon po. Okay ito po. Okay po. Sir Jeff, malinaw po at nakikita po ba ang presentation natin?
Sir yes, Jeff? Sir. Apo. Presenter view na lang po or slideshow present na lang po natin.
Okay po. Sige po.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So again, the presentation is all about assessment across modalities. Ano po? So a while ago, Sir Jeff, let us view the totality of DepEd Order number 31. And what I'm going to present as introduction of this presentation is just the highlights of this DepEd Order number 31. Okay, so we have this objectives. So again, this training aims to review DepEd Order number 31, and after the discussion, we're going to discuss vis-à-vis basic principles of assessment in various modality in preparation for next school year. We will try to marry what DepEd Order number 31 is trying to say or is telling us, and then we're going to merge the basic principles of assessment in various modalities, again, for the preparation for next school year. Okay, so the main purpose or goal of this or DepEd order is to ensure that learning continues amidst COVID-19 pandemic. We are considering, of course, the health, safety, and well-being of all. So, and then in terms of context or the legal basis of this DepEd order, this is basically anchored on, this basically supplements yung DepEd order number 12, series 2020, titled Adoption of the Basic Learning Continuity Plan for School Year 2020-2021 in light of COVID-19 pandemic. However, the problem was it was released, it was not released simultaneous with this DepEd Order number 12, 2020. Ano po? Medyo na-late po ang release ng DepEd Order number 31. Therefore, there were questions in the field on how they're going to assess the learners in this kind of setup. Ano po? However, a good thing, because when it was released, it was discussed by our school heads in different LAC sessions. Ano po? And then, according to this DepEd order, it shall be implemented in all public elementary and secondary schools nationwide for school year 2020-21. Okay, but again, if we are going to notice, which was discussed in the video, this is this DepEd order number 31 is just supplement of DepEd order number 8. Meaning to say, there are still provisions in DepEd order number 8, 2015, which are still in effect. Again, although provisions inconsistent with these guidelines are suspended for this school year. So if you notice, when we had our discussion, with our teachers, there were questions raised about the coherence of DepEd order number 8 and DepEd order number 31. So another highlight of this DepEd order is the thing or the principles of assessment. It should be holistic and authentic in capturing the attainment of most essential learning competencies. Because in this new normal, we were introduced by the term most essential with the term most essential learning competencies, and we learned that assessment, as mentioned, is integral for understanding student learning and development. Another thing, it also encourages us teachers to have the variety of assessment strategies, because we have different modalities, or we are having different kinds of learners, we have different kinds of needs. Kaya po yung variety of reading strategies is necessary. Assessment and feedback should be shared responsibility among teachers, learners, and their families. One of the questions we captured when we had this focus group discussion with some of the teachers is the reliability, even the authenticity, reliability of the assessment. Definitely, that's one of the questions or one of the issues about assessment. I hope as we have our discussion this afternoon, we could somehow lessen the question about the reliability of the assessment we are doing in the field. Assessment and grading should have a positive impact on learning. And that's basic thing, that the assessment is done not to give negative impact, rather it is done to give positive impact on learning and to our learners. So this DepEd order also mentions characteristics of assessment. Number one, it must be aligned with most essential learning competencies: reliable, valid, and transparent, fair, inclusive, and equitable, practical, and manageable for both learners and teachers, give learners a range of ways to demonstrate their learning, and provide timely and accurate information as a basis for feedback. Because we have shifted from the normal thing or the traditional face-to-face to the new normal. Definitely, there are questions with regard to, again, reliability, validity, and transparency, even the fair, inclusive, and equitable. So if you notice, DepEd released another memorandum stating how we're going to give recognitions or rewards to our learners to make sure still we are observing yung fair, inclusive, and equitable in this kind of setup. Another thing, that's why I included this in our presentation. It must be clear to everyone the role of teachers, learners, and parents. So for the teachers, basically, so you are expected to design the assessment to allow for flexibility in multiple modalities. And you are expected to communicate to learners and parents, guardians, the design and standards for grading the assessment, set up mechanisms to monitor and record progress remotely, give timely, constructive, and relevant feedback, and facilitating remediation for learners who need further guidance. So our division office is encouraging po yung contextualization in different areas, and part of which is how we're going to give timely, constructive, and relevant feedback. That's the reason why quarterly, we make sure that part of our monitoring is how the schools give timely, constructive, and relevant feedback. Because if before there was this need to make sure that feedback is given properly to our learners from time to time, especially po sa time na to, it is needed more, because this feedback should be needed and should be the basis of how we're going to design remediation for our learners. For our learners, we have to explain to them, and we hope that you were able to explain to them that they must be proactive in updating their teacher of their situation, progress, and challenges encountered. So we have to explain to them that their role is not just to submit the outputs, but they have to make sure that we know what's happening to them. In DepEd Dasmariñas, hindi po natin inaalaw pa yung home visitation, but that's one thing that would allow us to know the situation, the progress, and challenges encountered by our learners. In DepEd Dasmariñas, we have different kinds of monitoring. for us to know what's happening to our learners, so that the moment we design our intervention program, especially for the learners who could not cope with the most essential learning competency, or could not master the most essential learning competency, we know how to design it, and we could design it well. Well, aside from the teachers, learners, we have to explain to the parents and guardians their role in terms of assessment. Meaning to say, we have to communicate to them the updates on their child's situation, progress, challenges encountered. Doon po sa DepEd Order number 8, it explained din naman the role of parents and guardians in terms of communication, or how we're going to give them updates on how they're going to respond to the updates given by the teachers. However, in this kind of era, mas kailangan po nating ma-update ang ating parents and guardians, so that the school and homes could work together in towards betterment of this educational landscape. Ano po? Guiding their children in accomplishing the assessment tasks and or monitoring tools designed by their teacher. One question raised in the training we've been attending is, how could we make sure that our parents are just guiding their children, and they are not answering the assessment. Actually, until now, that's the big question. Kaya nga po, we encourage, especially next year or this coming days, we have to explain to them their limitation or the boundary that they have to be in, or they have to know, so that still learners could learn from the modules we have, or even from the discussions we have, either from synchronous or asynchronous methodologies po natin. So DepEd Order number 31 also gives us purpose of assessment. Ano po? So it has two purposes, formative and summative assessment. Ano po? Yun po. Those are the highlights of DepEd Order number 31. Ano po? Just a short recap and just a follow-up a discussion of the video presented by Sir Jeff a while ago. So this would tell us, and this would guide us about what's going to happen, what's happening, and what happened. Ano po? So that we should, for us teachers, we could design our lessons, even our learning activity sheet properly for the succeeding presentation po natin. Proceed na po tayo, because that was just a review of DepEd Order number 31. But this is really the heart of our discussion for this afternoon. I hope you're still there. Ayan po. This afternoon, we're going to basically present development of table of specification and crafting of test items in distance learning. Before I have the next slide, i-clarify muna natin yung ilang pong mga issues regarding this. Number one, is there a need to develop table of specification in this kind of situation? Ano po? Siguro ang tanong po ng ilang po nating viewers or participants in this training, why do we have to talk about this thing? Basically, what we are after with is just learning continuity. So quality, maybe some of our learners are not thinking about this, or even some of our parents are not thinking about this. But again, we in Department of Education, we assure not just learning continuity, but we could impart and they could master the most essential learning competencies in this kind of era. Ano po? Yun po yung madalas po nating nakukuhang reaction from the field, especially po sa ating pong mga teachers, and sa mga personal messages po nila, even doon po sa mga comment po nila, what is the reason why we have to talk about assessment in this kind of situation. Just permit me to present this presentation, and then afterwards, if you still have this kind of presentation, we're going of reaction. So we're going to address those things doon po sa dapat po na makareceive po nito. Ano po? This presentation po ay ginawa po ni Dr. Marilyn New Balagtas. If you still remember Dr. Marilyn New Balagtas, she presented different kinds of portfolio or different kinds of assessment in this kind of situation, in this new normal. This, if you remember, when she talked about how we're going to have different kinds of portfolio as form or a manifestation of learning of our learners. Ano po? In this presentation, this is the continuation of her presentation, and it was presented to the participants of Pivot Lamp. Ano po? So again, this is just cascading of the initial, the first presentation, but gradually or in the coming days, we are going to identify teachers who would be part of the technical working group of the teams that will be forming. It could be next month, or I think July would be the start of development of assessment per division. Ano po? The target topics, number one is assumption when preparing a table of specification for test in distance learning, process in preparing a table of specification for a test in distance learning, and use of table of specification in the development and validation of tests in distance learning. This would be the first part, and right after this, we're going to have a short break before we proceed to the last topic that we have this afternoon. Ano po? In-skip ko na lang po yung ilang po nating mga commercials here to make sure that we could maximize the use of our time for this afternoon. The first one would be assumptions when designing a table of specification for test in distance learning. Ano po? I believe most of you are familiar with table of specification, and definitely this table of specification would tell us about how we design and how we're going to design our assessment for different kinds of learners in different kinds of modality. Number one, the first assumption in terms of purpose, you are testing the cognitive traits, including knowledge, reasoning, and skills of the students before and or after giving a formal instruction, whether they were taught online or offline, television, mobile phones, or internet. Meaning to say, in terms of purpose, regardless of modality, we are testing the cognitive traits, which includes not only the knowledge, but also the reasoning skill, the reasoning and the skills of our learners. In terms of coverage, when we design a table of specification, we are thinking of the broad content, including long tests, quarterly tests, achievement tests, and not just a day or week lesson. Somebody asked if we're going to design table of specification for quizzes. Dr. Balagtas mentioned that there is no need to design table of specification for quizzes, only for broad content in the test, because this would tell if what are the things we have captured during the presentation. And then for the format, you can only use written test formats like selective test formats, multiple choice, alternative response, matching type, and supply test identification. But again, this assumption could somehow change as the days goes by. In terms of modality, you design one course for a test to be administered, whether offline, digital, print, or online. Later on, we're going to realize what is the reason why we have to make sure that the table of specification to be administered should be hitting the equality, or should be manifesting the equality among learners. And we also have the limitations. So you are aware that test is not the only way to assess, as there are other assessment strategies that could be used, like giving a performance task or requiring students' learning portfolios, aside from the administration of the test to your students. So as I mentioned a while ago, so our discussion would somehow review or still highlight some of the key points of DepEd Order number 31. And it was mentioned clearly in DepEd Order number 31 that this kind of era is requesting us not just focus on the test, the written test that we know, but we should know what is the appropriate assessment. And I believe as we have our discussion this afternoon, we're going to unlock some of our questions or queries about how we're going to assess our learners in this kind of limited situation. Second topic would be process in preparing a table of specification for a test in a distance learning. So this slide tells or presents to us the test development and validation process. Ideally, the word is ideally, this is how we should design, we should develop and validate tests. Okay, this would be the process. Okay, so from the design the test framework based on the purpose, we should identify the competencies, prepare and review the table of specification, write and review test items with key to feedbacking and rubrics, validate and revise test items with key and rubrics, prepare the test in intended modality, do pilot testing, do item analysis, revise if needed, try out the test, establish validity and reliability of the test and rubrics, and use the test based on the purpose. I mentioned po a while back that we're going to have the glimpse of what's going to happen in this coming few days. Therefore, I will be presenting only what is crucial, what is significant, and what can be used by our teachers as they have their online, offline. We also have the hybrid and the blended learning, if possible, this coming school year. So, meaning to say, apparently, we're going to talk about how we could have assessment appropriate in different kinds or across modalities. So, the first one would be design the test framework based on the purpose. Okay, so the purpose would hit the standards and competencies of the curriculum. It also talks about revise Bloom's taxonomy, framework of the questions, problems, and tasks. And not only the questions should be considered in designing our assessment, and as part of this discussion, we're going to look into the structure of observed learning outcomes or the choices by Biggs and Collis, because this would the best framework for the responses to problems or questions. The first one would be, let's try to look at the standards and competencies of curriculum. In designing the test framework based on the purpose, we have to consider the standards and competencies of the curriculum. Now, DepEd is using or hitting the most essential learning competencies. Our goal is for the learners to have or to attain or to master the most essential learning competencies. So we have the intended curriculum, and then we're going to have the implemented curriculum, and this curriculum will be assessed, and that's called assessed curriculum. And then it's after the assessed curriculum, and that's the attained curriculum. Global standards, hindi ko na po masyado itong idudwell kasi the next presentation or in the cascading of this training, we'll be talking about PISA teams, CPLM. We're going to learn the standards and competencies of the curriculum. We are going to learn din po in the cascading. Bakit nga po ba medyo nahihirapan po ang learners natin sa PISA teams? Bakit we could not say that our teachers are not capable to teach? Actually, magagaling po ang teachers natin. So, sa mga susunod po nating presentation, sa susunod po nating part ng cascading, we're going to learn the nature of PISA, the nature of teams, and not only to learn, but because that would be workshop, we're going to work on items used in PISA and teams. Meaning to say, kasi kung ang assessment po natin inside the classroom is not congruent to what they are expecting from us, definitely there will be a problem. When I was in Singapore for a scholarship, there was this question about assessment. So in terms of the language to be used in assessment, and that that area will be part of our discussion next training po natin. That would be a separate training because next presentation we will learn more about PISA, teams, and other assessment. Okay po. So again, in this, aside from the framework and competencies, we are going the competencies of the curriculum. It's also good that we know how to frame our questions or problems. And according to our speaker, the best framework in terms of the questions and how we're going to have the questions is the framework from Bloom. It was also mentioned in Simio Milk Rel, it's very important that we should look into the quality of questions, problems, or tasks, because the competencies are given. the competencies of the competence of our teachers. I undeniably we could say that we have good teachers in DepEd and Dasmariñas. Kasi marami po there are some questions or even issues in the field. Sir, they were not able to master the most essential learning competency out of 5, only 1 was mastered. We have to look into how we frame questions or problems. And later on, we're going to find out, and I hope you will realize, because when I attended this training, I realized a lot. I've been teaching, actually, I was a teacher for 10 years. Nung wala na ako sa classroom, saka ko lang natutunan, marami pala akong mali na ginagawa pagka-frame ng questions. Kaya akala ko, they were not able to master the competencies, but actually they were able to master. The problem is the way they framed questions. And that's also my expectation that you will realize in the long run how you're going to revise or have the paradigm shift in constructing questions. And the third one, okay, let's have first how we're going to frame questions or problems. Kasi nagkaroon tayo ng isang drastic paradigm shift in assessment framework. You are very familiar with this, aside from the noun has been changed into verb. So there was also there was also movement in terms of synthesis and evaluation first and then creation. So let's discuss them. So ito po, kung you are very familiar with this, ating pong mga teachers na narito, even sa ating pong mga school heads, ayan, kasama po ito doon sa ating pong inaaral when we were in pre-service education po natin. Ano po? So the cognitive behaviors in Vis-À-Vis Bloom's taxonomy, it was mentioned din po kanina on how we're going to have the remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating. Ano po? So medyo bibilisan ko po yung portion na to. Okay, kasi po itong portion na po ito ay makikita po natin as we have our presentation. Mga susunod po sa mga slides po natin. Okay, ito po. Knowledge dimensions in the revised Bloom's taxonomy. So knowledge dimension is categorized into factual, conceptual, procedural, metacognitive. Meaning to say, if you are planning to have the understanding level, if you're going to craft an item under understanding level, we have this notion na, sir, mababa lang po yan kasi nasa ano lang po siya, knowledge level lang po, sorry. Nandun po siya sa lowest level. Ano ba yung atin? Sa remembering. Ano po? This afternoon, I want you to learn that even the item is under remembering level. Teachers could design items which could be somehow deeper in terms of understanding, or for us to have the analysis of the items right after administering the exam. So meaning to say, in terms of knowledge dimension, items could be factual, meaning to say we are asking for the terminologies, specific details, or elements. Okay, this is good. This is applicable not only in the first level, which is the remembering. This can also be used even in the highest level of assessment, which is creating. Again, factual, if we are asking only for the terminologies, that the item is under factual. Conceptual, so we are measuring the knowledge of classifications, principles, generalization, theories, models, and structure. Procedural, if we are after to measure the knowledge of the learners in terms of subject-specific skills and algorithms or procedure. And the highest level of dimension, knowledge dimension, would be the metacognitive, meaning to say thinking beyond thinking. It could be self-knowledge, strategic knowledge, contextual, and conditional knowledge, knowledge of a cognitive task. These 4 terminologies, factual, conceptual, procedural, metacognitive, will be discussed in total in the next slides, as we have different kinds of questions in this kind of setup, regardless of modalities the learners would choose next school year. So again, the highest level would be the metacognitive. Okay, so this table presents different the dimensions. Again, we have the factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. And the Bloom's taxonomy, the revised Bloom's taxonomy, remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Meaning to say, the reason, I think the reason why there are numbers, not just to give you, okay, sir, pag po ba metacognitive, ang aking metacognitive under creation or create, ibig sabihin 24 points ay ibibigay po natin. Hindi po. We are just presenting the degree of each item. Ano po? Student-centered and authentic. Remember information. That's the lowest. That's the least student. Sorry, the word, not really lowest, but the least student-centered and authentic. Okay? And the most student-centered and authentic would be the metacognitive and under create and metacognitive. Po. Sige po. And sir, paano po ba yung remembering factual information? We have here sample sa math po ito na item. Ano po? So, remembering factual information. The teacher wants to assess the remembering skill or the factual information. Okay? The factual dimension po. Remembering. Math po. What is 9 in 4 plus 5? Okay, the answer would be 9. Okay, so what is 9 in 4 plus 5? Sorry, it was 9. We are after with remembering. Ibig sabihin, that's not yet given. This is stored in the memory of the learners. Okay, so in that case, they are going to have the sum. Okay, the answer would be the sum. Okay, and then they're going to, that item is under remembering factual. Okay, so we are just assessing if they could still remember factual information that we taught inside the classroom in all normal, or if they were able to understand the content of the module, or they were able to capture the presentation we had during the asynchronous learning. Next. Remembering pa rin po, but in this case, the teacher wants to make it under conceptual. Is it possible? Yes. So what is addition? Okay, in this case, the learner is going to remember the concept he or she learned in the discussion. Okay. Under procedural, okay, so again, nandun lang po tayo sa remembering, but we could make the item across different dimension. So what is the first step in adding numbers? Again, we are tapping the remembering skill, but we are after here with the procedure. Okay, so because we are talking about here the step and the metacognitive. Okay, in the metacognitive, we're going to put the item into the context of our learner, because this is based on their experience, and this they're going to think, they're going to, again, nasa remembering po tayo, but we could make it under metacognitive. Example, Maria bought 4 ripe and 5 unripe mangoes. How many ripe mangoes did she buy? In that case, that is under remembering, but we are hitting the metacognitive dimension. Okay, so just to simplify what we are trying to say, sir, kasi po na ano lang siya, remembering, kaya pinabawasan po namin sa kanya yung item na ganun. But if the teachers could make it under metacognitive, procedural, or conceptual, I think we could accept the items, ano po, and we could give the items to our learners. Next po. Again, we could also do the same sa understanding, applying, analyzing, and evaluating. Let's try to compare the test item or the assessment items that we could have. Under factual, what is 9 in 4 plus 5 equals 9. So if we're going to have it sa create na part po natin, so what mangoes will you buy? Okay, so that requires factual information. Okay, but you are going somehow, perhaps the learner could draw something and tell us what kind of mango he or she wants to buy. Okay, it could be a ripe mango, okay, or it could be unripe mango. Okay, under conceptual, what is addition? Ano po? We are asking them to remember the concept they learned during discussion. Under creating, so we could ask, what concept could you give, uh, could give you the total mangoes you bought? Okay. Under procedural, so we could have, what is the first step in addressing numbers? How will you get the total mangoes you bought? In that case, the learner is going to have the creation under procedural. And the last one would be, okay, you need to buy items at the store. What are these and their total? In that case, they're going to create something. It could be an essay, or it could be they're going to draw something of kind of items they will be buying, and then they're going to total the items of this. So let's proceed. That's how we're going to design example, have it understanding procedural. How will you show addition of 4 and 5? In that case, the learner is going to demonstrate based on how he understands. So applying, what is the sum of 4 and 5? Okay, that's under applying and procedural. Analyzing, so in that case, he or she will not be doing procedure, but rather he needs to analyze the context first before he could make the procedure. Okay, how does the sum of 4 and 5 compare with sum of 6 and 3? So they are going to analyze before they could do the procedure. Evaluate is the sum of 4 and 5, 10 in this case. So he will not be only doing the procedure of adding the two numbers aside after adding the 4 and 5. He would tell if 10 is the sum. He would say yes, he would say no. Okay, he would evaluate the answer. Number 3, under creating, show how to add any number. So in this case, so the numbers are not given. So they're going to think about the number. They're going to apply they're going to do the procedure, okay, by creating his or her own problem. Ito po yung naitanong ko kasi when it was presented to us, sabi ko, sir, hindi, ganun ba talaga sa isang math supervisor ng Lucena, my roommate, ganun ba talaga magbigay ng item ngayon sa math? Parang, hindi ba mahirap nang nagsasagot ka na nga ng problem, ngayon pala ang kalakaran sa math ay it's not just about how we're going to solve the problem. Ngayon pala, nire-require na ang learners to create the problem and solve the problem. Sabi ng isang math supervisor, yes sir, hindi na po siya yung, okay, solve this. Okay? There are instances wherein the learners are going to create the problem. After creating the problem, they're going to solve the problem. There are different examples of these items later on po. Okay po. Now, sir, how about, ano po, we want to have the metacognitive across this dimension. Po, these dimensions po. So, kanina, sabi po natin, under remembering, we could have the metacognitive. Maria bought 4 ripe and 5 unripe mangoes. How many ripe mangoes did she buy? Okay? So, he or she needs to remember it, and the context or the item was put in the context of the learner. Okay? Understanding, Maria bought 4 ripe and 5 unripe mangoes. Which is more? It becomes metacognitive, but he or she needs to understand first the problem before she or he could give the answer. Right? And then under applying, Maria bought 4 ripe and 5 unripe. How many mangoes did she buy? In this case, he is going to solve. Okay, that's under metacognitive application because he is going to apply what he or she learned from the discussion or from the module. And then analyzing, Maria bought 4 ripe and 5 unripe mangoes today. She bought 10 mangoes yesterday. How many mangoes did she buy in all? Okay, so meaning to say, in this case, the learners are going to think about what she bought yesterday and what she bought today. Okay? So there would be analysis kasi possible kasi the question would be it's just about the mangoes he or she bought yesterday, not including what she bought today. Therefore, before she could answer that, kasi marami pong learners tayo nagkakamali because they think that that's part, these are the items or these are the numbers 4 and 5 and 10, they're going to add it without analyzing what is required, what is being asked by the context or by the statement. We also have the evaluation. Okay, meaning to say we're going to judge, we're going to weigh things. Maria bought 4 ripe and 5 unripe mangoes. She bought 10 mangoes in all. Do you agree? Explain. So imagine in this case, you are going to justify if 10 is the sum of 4 and 5. Okay? How could you depend it? You're going to state if you agree, yes or no, and then you're going to explain your answer. Why did you say that's 4 and 5? And then creating, sabi nila, you need to buy items at store. What are these and their total? In this case, you are giving them the opportunity to think of the things they're going to buy, their metacognitive, and then right after that, they're going to create their own computation. Singit ko lang po, ang sabi nila, one of the realizations in the training, sabi, kaya daw medyo mababa ang naging outcome ng ating pong principles test nung nakaraan. Siguro talaga naman pong mahirap yung principles test. Sinasabi nila na that's how they designed the questions. Meaning to say, not just a simple remembering, not just simple understanding, not just simple applying, not just simple analyzing, not just simple evaluating, not just simple creating, but they dig deeper to make sure that they are topping the procedural, the conceptual, and metacognitive. Not only that, because later on, not only questions are crucial in the assessment. Again, ulitin po natin, we are required or we are tasked to make long tests, unit tests. Pero hindi po tayo gumagawa ng summative test dito sa situation na to. Kaya nung nagtanong po during our CID meeting, kung ang teachers ba nagbibigay ng long 31, yes, we could make long tests. Okay, if we're going to make long tests, but actually the items that we are talking about here are also applicable the moment we make simple tests in our online or even in our modular, because this would pose challenging. Hindi po natin sinasabi na kailangan, sir, mahirap po. Kailangan po ba mahirap ang exam? No, hindi po. Challenging in the sense that so the last would be for this presentation before we 5-minute CR break. We yung mga different framework, even the most essential learning competency, because the items must be anchored with the most essential learning competency. As teachers, as designers of our classroom-based assessment, we have to look into the revised Bloom's taxonomy, because this would tell us how we're going to frame our questions, problems, and tasks. Okay, sir, we have the most essential learning competency. We know how to have this. And then we have the questions. And hindi po ba na yung dalawa na lang yun ng assessment in designing the test framework based on the purpose. And we have to consider yung structure of observed learning outcomes, yung tinatawag po nilang solo ni Biggs and Collis. So this framework teaches us how we're going to give choices. Kaya nga po sabi doon sa isang training, doon sa ating pong mga principal aspirants, kasi daw po, na-overwhelmed ang mga takers sa question. Para kasi, we are perhaps in crafting questions or developing questions. Pero pagka ito na yung responses, medyo naguluhan tayo and we have to go back to the question. Kasi nga po, parang naging idea ng teacher in making your items, whether in quiz, in long test, in quizzes, or even in summative test, ang mahalaga doon yung questions, ang choices hindi. Ngayon ko lang na-realize ko sa training kasi po, when I was a classroom teacher, ang nagiging setup namin, sige, you have to make your questions. Okay? Kasi ano siya, multiple choice. Choices will be followed, meaning to say I have to see the questions if this would the remember, this would under create. Now I realize that not only questions are important in making the assessment, we also give high importance on the responses, the choices. Okay? Sige po. The solo of Biggs and Collis, 1982, tells us that there are 5 typical ways to answer a question. Ganito daw po kasi mag-isip, or that's how we're going to interpret. The first one po, linawin ko po yan. Ganito mag-isip, that's how the learners answer our assessment, either quizzes, long tests, or quarterly tests. Number 2, we should analyze the results. Hindi po kasi kaya ako po kahit po marami po kaming ginagawa ng time na yon, yun po ay audit ng ISO. Sorry, that's pre-audit by internal audit ng ISO ay talagang hindi ko umalis lang ako sa room nung mismong time na namin para magtanong yung aming pong auditor. Hindi ko pinalampas po ito kasi during this presentation, sabi ko, imagine, nagturo rin naman ako ng matagal inside the classroom. I taught 10 years. I was in the classroom for 10 years. Kaya ko lang na-realize, ito pala dapat yung structure. This is how we're going to design the choices. Kasi parang naging actor lang ako, this is how we're going to design the questions. Na kailangan pala, not only from, nakita ko, marami yung nakakuha ng 10, marami nakakuha ng 9, marami, nagpataas kami ng kamay for the item analysis without thinking, bakit A yung sinagot nila? Bakit B yung sinagot nila? Why C? Why D? So we have to understand those things because definitely this would tell us if we are going to redesign, we're going to revise, or if we need to enhance our tests, our choices, even our questions. Ano po? The first one would be this one. Yung pre-structural. It is called pre-structural. I'm not sure about this subject. Meaning to say, in this case, the learner doesn't have any idea about this. Ito yung wrong answer natin, as in wrong. Okay? Kasi ang naging po natin, orientation, perhaps practice inside the classroom. There is one extreme, yung choices natin. There is one wrong, there is one correct. The 3 should be wrong. Parang, sige, A, B, C, D, A would be the correct answer. B, C, D would be the wrong answer. The wrong answers. So, parang ganun yung naging orientation, even yung practice natin. Ang sinasabi ni Biggs and Collis, 1982, kailangan daw, even our choices should tell about our our teaching approaches, our pedagogies, or our lesson planning. Ano po? The first one is structural. I'm not sure about this subject. Okay? Aside from this, may mga bata na they have only one idea about this subject. Perhaps they know about the concept, addition, but they do not know how to apply it. Kung titingnan natin, kung i-analyze natin, kung maraming bata ang sumagot sa letter B, for instance, it's under letter B, maraming sumagot dyan, we could not say, sir, ang tanga-tanga ko naman kasi wala pong natutunan ng bata sa akin. Kung they have learned at least one idea about the subject, I think, medyo, sige, ngiti na lang ng kaunti yung teachers, at least, sir, hindi po A, kasi talagang as in zero knowledge sila sa subject. They learn, they know what is addition, but they do not know how to apply it. Unistructural. Multistructural, I have several ideas about this subject. Okay? Meron, I know a lot of things. Hindi ko naman yan, nakuha ko po siya during our discussion. That's somehow good. Ano po? Okay? Medyo okay na rin. Pero, hindi kasi doon tayo natatapos eh. It should be these ideas, we have to see if our learners could link the ideas together to see the big picture. Okay? So halimbawa, they know the sequence of the planets, which is the biggest and which is the lowest. Okay? This multi-structural. But if we're going to put that in one table, and then they're going to somehow look at the density, they're going to look at the temperature, and you're going to prompt question about relational, they're going to see how these things are interconnected. That's under relational. And yung extended abstract naman po, yung I can look at these ideas in a new and different way. Ito naman medyo extreme na yung bata, yung hindi lang, sabihin natin magaling na yung bata. He or she is not satisfied with linking these ideas together, but he could go beyond what he learned, not only by merging these things together and put them in a big picture. Okay, that's called extended abstract. Okay. Ito po yung kwan po natin. Solo can be used to structure choices in multiple choice items. Meaning to say, o pala yung teacher, or if I would be the principal, I would give technical assistance. So, hindi, kasi ang naging practice natin, we're just after with the table of specification, we compute the total, we compute the items if that's 60, 100%, and then that's under remembering. But this framework of solo would tell us na pwede din pala natin tingnan yung structure ng choices. If there is one item saying that the students do not have idea, there is another choice would tell that, hey, our learners learn even single idea. If I would do remediation, I would look into what ideas did they not learn. There is another item would tell they know different ideas. Okay? Not just a single idea. But there is one correct answer that would tell they learn different ideas from our discussion. Aside from learning, they were able to put them together. Po, yun ang kagandahan po ng solo ni Biggs and Collis. Solo can also be used in structuring rubrics in checking responses to constructed response items. Not only the multiple choice items, but solo can also be used, meaning to say, if we're going to design rubric, we're going to look into when is the time you're going to give the learner 1? When is the time you're going to give the learner 2? When is the time you're going to give the learner 3? When is the time you give the learner 4? Ano po? When is the time you're going to give your learner 0 if that is applicable? Okay, so meaning to say, solo framework could also help us in designing or structuring rubrics for the constructed response items. Solo can be used in scoring and interpretation of test results. That's the reason why I mentioned a while back that this framework would tell, kasi sabihin kasi natin the questions would tell if kasi madalas ko itong marinig sa field when I was in the classroom. Sir, mababa po yung naging result ng amin pong exam. There are different factors. It could be, sir, baka medyo nakulangan po kami sa teaching or sa delivery, medyo nakulang po. Or, sir, perhaps the questions we crafted or developed are not appropriate or we're not able to measure yung competency. Ganun lang kalimitan. We stop there. But actually, solo is telling us that not only the questions have the problem, but even the choices that we put or include in the test that we have included. Okay po. Sinasabi ng solo that because we have the pre-structural, unistructural, multi-relational, and extended abstract. Okay? If we're going to put code 0, I'm not sure about this topic. As in, totally. Pag sinagot niya yung A, kasi ako parang hindi ko after. Sino yung sumagot ng A? Hindi na ako after doon. Ang tanong natin during the item analysis is, who got 5? Who got 4? Who got 3? Who got 2? Who got 1? Without thinking, sino ba yung sumagot ng A? Para alam ko, out of my 50 learners, ilan ba yung talagang zero topic, zero knowledge? As in, wala na siyang natutunan doon. Okay? Number 2, I have one idea about this topic. Medyo pakonsuelo sa teacher kung meron sumagot, halimbawa, you put this sa letter B. Okay? Okay? So, at least, sasabihin mo, ano yung di natutunan ng bata? Okay? Perhaps he was able to learn the measurement ng ng density ng planets, pero he was not able to learn how to measure yung temperature. Okay? Number two, I have several ideas about this topic. Okay? Good, no? Okay, the learner at least learns not just a single idea, but several ideas. Better if the learners, that's why it's under deep, can link the ideas together to see the big picture. Okay? So he could put together these items so that they could have big picture of what is expected sa kanilang assessment po. And number four, I can look at this idea in a new and different way. Ano po? This is more, usually under creative. Aside from having these ideas, the learners would have a different way on presenting these ideas in a different way. So, kaya po ang ating pong treatment dyan, yung 0, 1, 2 is surface level, and 3 and 4 would be under deep level of thinking. Let's have this sample. Ano po? So, example, ang concept po natin ay classify objects and materials as solid, liquid, and gas based on some observable characteristics. Okay? So, yun po yung learning competency po natin. Ang binigay po ninyo na question would be, you put together the solids in your cabinet. Okay? Which set of objects could this be? Analyze muna natin yung question. Ano po? That's under understand or understanding. Metacognitive kasi we put that in context. Meaning to say, inilagay natin yung cabinet. Okay? Yung word na cabinet, siguro naman yung learners natin, they know what cabinet is. Okay? So, if we're going to analyze the question, understanding, metacognitive, take note, that's personal. Why? What makes it personal? Because we use the pronoun you. Siguro alam to nung ilan po natin na naging estudyante ko sa Emilio Aguinaldo na Teachers and DASMA. Meron kaming isang topic na nagsasabi na even in grammar lesson, if you're going to put the context in the personal side of our learners, the learners could answer the items easily. Kasi marami tayong items na inilalagay sa quizzes, sa long test, or even in the quarterly assessment, hindi alam ng bata saan siya huhugot. Hindi niya malaman kung saan ba ito galing. Okay? Kaya sinasabi nila, the learners could understand grammar easily if the items, the samples given, are contextual or personal in nature. Ano po? So, these are the choices. Diba sabi natin, this is just the outcome of solo. If solo is not used in designing choices, ito daw yung outcome. So, cheese, jam, jelly, water, milk, vinegar, noodles, canned goods, biscuits, fire extinguisher, inflated balloon, and then oxygen tank. Okay. Evaluate the level of authenticity of the options given in the multiple choice item, which has the highest level of authenticity, authentic in nature. So, the same pa rin yung ating pong competency, understanding, metacognitive, and personal. Yung cheese, butter, and jelly, option 1, code natin ay 2, multi-structural. The learner, kung ito yung sagot ng bata, the learner learns not just a single idea. Okay? He learns or she learns different ideas. If the learner answers water, milk, vinegar, unistructural. Okay? Meron sa susunod kasing presentation, we're going to discuss why it happens. And then, if the learner answers 3 or C, it's relational. Okay? And then, if the learner answers D, it's 0, yung code natin. Okay? Pre-structural. Okay? Nilalagay ito. Ano po? Okay? 0 to 4, sardines, pack of dried noodles, biscuits in can, boxes of powdered milk. Extended abstract na po yun. Okay? Meaning to say beyond doon sa next step po natin. Okay, sige, tingnan po natin. Kasi bakit siya multi-structural? Kasi yung cheese and butter, this one is the milk. And then relational, he was able to combine not just the learning about the solid, but he was able to see how these things are related. And we also have the pre-structural and okay po. So another sample po of the item. You put together the solids in your cabinet. Which set of objects could this be? Could this be? All solo levels understand to create metacognitive personality. Ano po? Yan. Sabi niya, yung kanina binigay po nating sample, so you need to put together the solids in your cabinet. What objects you will put together? Extended abstract na. If we will be asking the learners to think of the objects, and then they're going to put them, that's under creating metacognitive and personal. Okay. Reminder po. Okay. So before we have our break, reminder in designing a test. The first reminder as related to sa framework po natin is have a clear framework for the target content, questioning, and structure of responses in the test. Okay, so it's very important, it's very crucial that we know how to design tests based on the framework. At gusto ko rin pong i-emphasize yung pong the importance of having the clear framework for the content, questioning, and structure of responses is not only good for the test, even in the questioning technique that we have inside the classroom. Kung mabibigyan tayo ng pagkakataon, doon sinasabi po natin na blended, na hybrid learning. So, akala kasi ng iba, sir, I think what matters most is how we construct questions in the test. Okay? Ang sinasabi po sinasabi po ng concept ng BICS, ng CLIL, the reason why the learners could not answer that assessment given because the quality of questions given in the real life question and answer in the real life teaching and learning process are not congruent. Parang ganito po yun. Ito yung nasa principle po ng content and language integrated learning doon sa mga naka-attend ng mga international training sa mga content and language integrated learning. Minsan daw, naghahanap ang teacher kasi pag nagbigay siya ng test, nagbigay siya ng quiz right after that, bakit daw hindi, pakaramdam niya, he or she was able to discuss everything. Okay? Bakit mababa yung naging outcome nun? Ang tinitingnan po nila is congruence of the language. Kasi there are teachers teaching the subject in Filipino because they really want to help the learners, and that's good. Okay, so for them to understand the lesson, example, I'm an English teacher, for them to understand the lesson, I have to translate the items into or the discussion into Filipino. Okay? Kasi, sir, talagang ito na lang yung last sort po namin. Okay? O sige, go. Okay, pero sinasabi ng principal ng I do not know if you would agree, hindi ko na po kayo iingan ng comment dyan sa comment section, baka humaba po yung discussion natin. Ang sinasabi yung principle ng CLIL, Content and Language Integrated Learning, pagdating naman daw sa assessment, ang ginagawa ng teacher, sa English niya binibigay. Meaning to say, the language used in discussion or instruction is not the same in the language they have used in the assessment. Diba? Parang, sige, dahil gusto lang matulungan ng bata for them to understand this, and the specific content, bakit nagbigay ka ng exam in English? Sir, kasi English po yung subject, that's why I used the language. Medyo marami po tayong discussion about that, pero hindi po ito yung right na to. We'll be having a separate discussion. Meron na po tayong may nakaabang po tayong isang seminar, yung Content and Language Integrated Learning. Kasama po ito dito sa bakasyon, nag-dinesign ko po para sa English. But I will be inviting some teachers or other teachers from different learning areas. Okay? Kasi this would tell us, bakit nga ba hindi nag-jive yung ating pong assessment sa quality ng instruction that we have. Hindi kasi natin matanggap na there is problem with my teaching. Tama po yun. Wala talagang problema. Bakit sir ganun? We're going to look at how the instruction and the test would marry or mag-jive sila sa mga susunod po nating discussion. That's clear. Medyo matagal-tagal pong discussion yun. Okay po. We're going to pause for a while. Bigyan nyo lang po, magbibigay lang po ako ng 5 minutes sa atin pong, sorry, kay Sir Jeff, hindi ko alam kung ilang minutes po yung ating break. Kapraso na lang po ito, but kasi nga po medyo iba po yung frame, yung takbo ng susunod po nating discussion. Just to have a simple cognitive break. Thank you, Sir Jeff.
All right. So, some remarks before we proceed to our session. No, I just received a message from the Sir Rent. Sabi niya, Doc Jeff, paki-instruct po yung mga persons na hindi naka-time in kahapon at nakapag-evaluate to continue timing in. Dire-diretso lang daw po ang pag-time in ng ating mga participants po for this capacity building. Kung in ngayong araw at mag-evaluate mamaya para may certificate pa din sila. Pero yun nga lang daw po, mayroong konting effect ito sa number of hours. Then, yung mga participants po na hindi naka-time in kahapon, yung mga hindi po naka-time in kahapon, ay magbubukas po ang registration ulit po natin bukas, Saturday, ng alas 8 ng umaga. Ayan, para mabigyan po ng pagkakataon ang mga hindi nakapag-time in kahapon na makapag-register po sa atin pong capacity building on learning, delivery, hybrid learning. Alright, at sa mga may mga naman po sa session na ginawa po ni Sir Noel kanina, we will questions and clarifications after Sir Noel's presentation. So please post your queries in the chat box and we will address that during the open forum. No? So we still have a lot to unpack. So let us have the continuation of the session of Sir Noel, development and validation process. Hi, sir.
Hello po, Sir Jeff. I hope
Ayan, so parang
ating pong audio.
medyo napa-check nga ako sa aking baka yung aking headphone pang medyo mahina. Alright, so yes sir, test, mag-mic test ulit. Hello sir again.
Hello, sir.
Ayan, okay po ang ating audio. Alright, so we will proceed na po for your next part of the session on sabi nga natin kanina, task development, tama sir? And validation process.
Aba. Sige po, sir.
Alright, so
Sir,
as of the moment,
Aba.
we have 692 participants, 695, tumataas ulit. Sa iba't ibang kadahilanan, ay may mga nag-share pa, talagang nagpa-participate. Ayan, sabi ni Ma'am Rolio, hindi po ako nakapag-evaluate kahapon, sir. Tuloy lang po, Ma'am Dina. Ako, at kung hindi po nakapag-evaluate, okay lang po. No? Mag-open po tomorrow yung para po ma-address naman po ang inyong issue. Alright, so let us once again, our resource speaker for the validation process. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Sir Noel Ansiado.
Hello po. Good afternoon po ulit. So we're going to proceed. We're going to carry on para po matapos na po ang ating pong discussion this afternoon. Sana po nakikita na po yung ating presentation po ulit.
Yes, sir. I-slide show na lang. Ayan. Alright, better po. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
You may now proceed po.
Okay po. We pause for a while, and the last slide we have is the reminder in designing a test. Ano po? So we have to have a clear framework for the target content. What are we measuring? Content. Okay? How we're going to craft questions. Okay? So the reason why we talked about yung pong revised Bloom's taxonomy, because basically that's how we should design our questions. Not only the content, not only the questions, but also the structure of responses in the test is very crucial. It's very significant. Ano po? So, and then there was also an intriguing statement I made this afternoon. The reason why I made it intriguing because I do not know if they would agree with me if there's a statement po from the principle of content and language integrated learning. The reason why sometimes our learners could not answer the tests or the questions we have given in the test because they are not congruent to the language we use is not the language we use in the instruction. Ano po? Now, so we are design the test framework based on purpose. The second would be, worry not, hindi po natin to tatapusin. Sabi ko po sa inyo ay, ano to, with the permission of our chief, kasi ano na po to, pinakikita na namin sa inyo what would be the design of the cascading, the assessment, training on assessment cascading. Kasi po, whether we like it or we like it, ay makakaroon po tayo ng cascading na hindi po siya typical na training, but this is a workshop. Meaning to say, our teachers, for those who are interested, kaya pinapakita ko na po yung how we're going to design, how we're going to have the test. Another purpose, baka po kasi maging limited po yung atin pong pagtingin sa ginagawa po natin, yung pagdidiscuss po natin. I believe we have online course creators here. We also have yung pong magawa po ng ating mga SLMs. Kasi definitely, you will learn a lot from the presentation of Ms. Balagtas, which I am cascading right now. Kasi nga po, we have to review our questions, yung nagre-revise pa ng kanilang mga, nag-enhance pa ng kanilang mga online. And you think you could apply most of the principles that we are talking about here better. Not only that, we are also after with how we're going to have our own question given the chance to have our hybrid learning. Meaning to say, sa totoo lang naman po ay talagang hindi ko naman pwedeng sabihin na pag bumalik na yung long test kasi sinasabi naman ng DepEd Order number 31, hindi naman po nawala ang long test, quizzes, ang atin pong mga unit test. Ang tinanggal lang partially pero in the form of summative and in the form of performance tasks and written works ay yung summative test po natin. Ano po? So maging malinaw lang po yun. Baka kasi sinasabi, sir, ayaw po namin dyan sa technical working group ng paggagawa ng assessment. That's why I think we could not apply what we are discussing here. Ano po? Kaya pinilit ko po, kahit medyo nagkaroon po ng ilang mga lapses along the way, sabi ko kay Sir Jo, sige Sir Jo, kasi talagang maganda po ito. Even the way we ask questions inside the classroom, or even the way we ask questions sa mga learning activity sheet na ginagawa po natin, or even the way we craft our long test or unit test, we believe you are doing such things, or yes. Po. Next. So, number 2 po is we have to identify target competencies. Okay? So, still, we are in the test development and validation process, regardless if it is offline or online distance learning. Remember the different learning outcomes and appropriate assessment methods. Okay? So the target learning outcomes po natin ay example, we're going to target knowledge. Okay? So knowledge can be done in objective tests. Okay? So it could also be done in written test with rubric. Can also be performance task with rubric, could be portfolio assessment, or the non-test or the self-report measures. Okay? So meaning to say, if you are after only with measuring or assessing the knowledge level of our learners, we could do this through objective test, written test, performance task, portfolio assessment, and non-test or the self-report measures. What if we want to measure the reasoning skill or the reasoning ability of our learners, right? So we could have it objective test, but it's more on written test with rubric. Kasi in this case, the learners are going to reason out why it happens, why it does not happen, right? But can also be done in performance task, but given there is rubric. This can also be measured or assessed using portfolio. Yung portfolio po natin, we will not be discussing in total because I understand we learned portfolio and portfolio assessment before the school year started po, yung pong first talk ni Dr. Balagtas. And then the non-test can also be, okay? Skills. We want to measure the skills of the learners if they were able to acquire the skills required by the most essential learning competency. We can give objective tests, but it's more on written tests, performance tasks, portfolio assessment. Okay? But we can give this also through non-test. Okay? Sir, what if we want to assess the product, meaning to say the output? Okay? So definitely this is not this can be objective test because in the application part we could have this, or in the creating part we could have the written, but it's more on performance task, portfolio assessment. Okay? Affect or disposition, this could be portfolio assessment and the non-test. Okay? The table is showing us that we could have different kinds of assessment, whether it's objective, written, performance, portfolio, or non-test across target learning outcomes. Now, medyo late po kasi yung dating ng ano nyo, ng inyong comment kasi nga po ay you are watching through our YouTube. Kaya medyo nahihirapan sana ako if we're going to make it more interactive. Kasi walang participants na narito po. Ayan. Ay nakuha naman ako si Sir John sumagot nitong lahat. Ano po? So I'll be showing here some competencies which are appropriate for a test. Okay? So we are talking about here the test. Okay? Because there are some competencies which cannot be measured or cannot be assessed in the traditional or in just a simple test. Okay? So there are 5 items here. Okay? Use words that describe persons. Ito kasi ay ang may-present ko yung sagot na po. Use words that describe persons, places, animals, and events. Draw conclusions based on pictures, stimuli, passages, and write a different story ending. And write simple friendly letters observing the correct format. 5, compose riddles, slogan, announcement from the given stimuli. Okay? Out of these 5 competencies, the first 3 are appropriate for a test. Okay? Because we could have it using words that describe persons, definitely. We could ask the learners to draw conclusions based on a picture, or we could ask them to write a different story ending. Okay, the story was given, the story has been given, and then they're going to write a story ending. Okay, so these 3 are appropriate for a test. Okay, before I proceed, I remember, isingit ko na din po, what we are doing, aside from I'm part of the regional assessment team na hindi naman po ako ganun ka-active. I'm also part of the regional milk mapping. Okay. Ang ginagawa po sa milk mapping, para magkaroon din po ng idea, we call it heads up sa lahat. So, what we are doing, we are identifying which competencies are appropriate for a traditional test, which are appropriate for written test, which are appropriate for non-behavioral test, something, and which are appropriate for performance. Okay? So, naisingit ko lang because what we are discussing, we teachers should know what items or what competencies are appropriate for a test. Okay. Still have this one. Which competencies still are appropriate for a test? Okay. Infer the weather changes during the day and from day to day. Practice care and concern for animals. Practice in campaigns and activities for improving or managing one's environment. Compare the ability of land, water to absorb and release heat. Five, describe the four types of climate in the Philippines. Sige nga po, using your comment section, kahit medyo late tayo, baka naman po pwede nating ma-identify which among the competencies are appropriate for a test. I would read the comments po. Ano po? Sige po. Liz, do identify using your comment section. Just indicate the number which competencies are appropriate for a test. Tingnan ko nga po, meron ba po tayong audience? Sa dami po naging interruption po natin a while ago. Sige po. Do we still have audience? Which competencies are appropriate for a test? How could I read the comments here? Sorry, Sir Jeff.
Ay, naka-mute pala ako, sir.
Okay.
Ano po, marami pa po tayong, yes po, we have 7 participants. Ang daldal ko, naka-mute pala ako, sorry. From Jan, number 5 daw po. Ayan. Gayun din po ang
Okay.
sabi ni Ma'am Beda Joy Kamba, watching in Facebook naman po. From Ma'am April,
Okay.
from Ma'am Rinalyn Buluran, numbers 1, 4, and 5. Para naman po kay Sir Mark Lompero, number 5. Para po kay Ma'am Irene Sarol, number 5. Si Ma'am Norina naman po watching 4 and 5. Ayan. Si Ma'am Redilia Lopez naman po, number 5. Sunod ang pagpasok ng kanilang mga answer. Ma'am Jenny Manalak, number 1. Ma'am Generosa Areño, 1, 4, and 5. Alright. Numbers 5 and 4 naman po para kay Ma'am Mary Ann Ramirez. Numbers 4 and 5, sabi ni Ne. At Ma'am Edeline Paraiso, 5 only. Ma'am Kay Doliete, Ma'am Marilyn Valdez, both answered 4 and 5. Teacher She naman po, medyo iba yung kanya. Numbers 1, 4, and 5. Alright. At si Sir Ren po ay nagkakaroon din ng reminder na ang atin daw pong timing in will 1 minute. So pwede din daw pong mag-attendance or mag-time in. Kung mga hindi pa po nakapag-time in. Alright. Thank you, Sir Ren. Ma'am Christine Glanza and Ma'am Ann Liza Alquisola both answered 4 and 5. Ayan. Gayon din po ang answer ni Ma'am Leline Disono Dait. Okay, medyo nagbavari na po yung mga ng ating mga participants. Thank you, sir. Back to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Ayan. Buti na lang po, may kasama pala ako sa StreamYard. Napakahirap pala nito. One of the challenges would be, you do not know if we still have participants. And if there are questions, definitely, there are times you have to answer our questions. But I'm so grateful because from the comments you've been posting here, meron pa rin po tayong participants. Friday na, pero wala naman siguro magagala, although it's Friday night and walang gigimik. Kaya kaunti na lang po, okay? So what are the items or which are the competencies appropriate for a test? Let's try to find out. Ayan, marami pong nakatama. It's 1, 4, and 5. Si Ma'am, umabot si Ma'am Marlene. Ayan, 1, 4, 5. Okay. So what are those? We have to infer that the weather changes during the day and from the day to day. compare the ability of land and water to observe and release heat, describe the 4 types of climate in the Philippines. Okay. 2, practice care and concern for animals. But we could not put it in a test, and we participate in campaigns and activities for improving and managing one's environment. I'm just thinking, just a weird assumption. Siguro yung iba nagtatanong sa inyo, sir, what shall we do if these competencies are included or are considered as most essential learning competencies? How could we know if which among the competencies are mastered or not if we will not be putting this in the test? I mentioned earlier that not all competencies are measured through tests. Okay, there are competencies that can be measured in different applications. Okay, now, so which competencies are appropriate for a test? Again, so I'm giving you just 1 minute to think which among these competencies are appropriate for a test. I think sa mga math wizard, ayan, medyo mauunahan tayo ng mga to. Among the 5 competencies we have here, which are appropriate for a test?
Alright, so medyo delay lang po tayo, ano sir, pero maya-maya ipapasok rin yan. Para po kay Sir Daniel, siguro ito dun sa nauna po nating slide. Numbers 2 and 3 daw po can be performance task. Ayan. Oh, eto na po, may answer na po tayo from Ma'am, siguro ito si Ma'am Asgera? Nakalimutan yung surname, baka magkamali pa ako. From Math is Fan, numbers 1, 3 daw po. At ito din po ang answer ng Dasma North Science. Wow, mukhang nagkaisa sila. 1, 3, 4, and 5. Yun din po ang answer ni Ma'am Maylene Masagnay. Same goes to Ma'am Generosa Areño, numbers 1, 3, 4, and 5. May ibang answer lamang po ang iba nating participants. 2, 4, and 5. Sabi naman ni Ma'am Cristina Catindoy Valyaser. At sunod-sunod na nga po ang pagsagot nila. At sa Facebook naman po nanonood, Ma'am Reyna Lu, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Sa YouTube naman po, from Ma'am Generosa Areño, 1, 3, 4, and 5. Same Dasman North. Kay Ma'am Flor Dizon, na and 5 lang daw po. Ayan, at sunod-sunod na nga po. Alright, back to you, sir.
Ayan. Thank you po. Okay, now let's try to find out which are appropriate for a test. Actually, all. Ano po? So, ang medyo, some of you did not answer 2, but I think most answered 2. Okay? But some did not, or few did not answer 2. Ayan, pumapasok pa rin po. Yes, may mga sumasagot din naman ng 4 because technically, if you're going to look at item number 2, they're going to construct plain figures. That's under creating. But again, we could, there is this parameter using ruler or compass. We're going to measure if the learners know how to use ruler and compass, and we could have some sort of rubric for this. Okay? Yung third item po, ayan po, reminder po natin in designing a test. Not all competencies in the intended curriculum, when we say the intended curriculum, the prescribed curriculum, lend themselves to tests. Some require use, performance-based, or alternative ways of assessing learning. Now, siguro this is the right time to answer the question. Sir, kasi aside from, yes, we have to consider if these competencies are can be measured using the test that we have, or some can be measured using performance tests or alternative ways. Sir, possible po ba yun? Kasi one of the things that we have to learn as teachers is to identify if the competency is under what kind of skill. Okay, is it under remembering? Is the competency under create? Is the competency under designing? Ang principle po na ipinagdudukdukan po sa amin, sana maging eye-opener din po ito because naging eye-opener po ito sa akin, sa mga kasama po namin. Ang isa po nating nagiging mali sa field, the moment we make our assessment or our test items, marami pong items na nilalagay tayo, mas mataas pa doon sa hinihingi ng competency. What I'm trying to say, if the competency is just under remember, okay? Remembering or remember, do not make an item higher than remembering. We could make equal or lower than the competency. Bitin ko po. Pag po ang pag ang competency ay nasa understanding, okay? We could design test item classified as understanding or understand or remembering. But we could not have an item higher to what is expected from them. May kwento ko po, kasi medyo konti na lang naman po ito. Meron po akong nag-observe po ako ng isang klase. Right after having our discussion, the teacher was good. Talagang magaling po yung teacher. Okay? Kaso, right after that, we let her exit for the conference. So the school head and I talked about things. Binigay ko yung aking naging feedback. Ano po? Natutuwa po ako sa isang school head na sinasabi, sir, hindi ko yun nakikita ever since. May ganun pala. Ngayon ko lang siya nalaman at maganda pala siya. Ang isa pong ang naging iniintay ko sana sa kanya ay malagyan niya ng comment o mas mabigyan niya ng TA ang teacher kasi ay ano lang lowest level lang, sorry sa term. Nandun lang siya sa remembering ang competency. Napakasimple lang ng competency. Pero nung nagbibigay na ng assessment ang teacher, itinaas ng teacher ng napakataas sa evaluating ang mga assessment. Nung nagbibilang na ng tamang ng sagot, nung nag-item analysis, kakaunti ang nakakuha. Definitely, if we're going to analyze what happened, we could say, sir, they were not able to master the competency. That's how we're going to interpret it because they were not able to answer correctly the 5-item quiz. Kaya sabi ko sa school head, sabi ko, ma'am, sorry but I beg to disagree. The learners were able to answer, were able to master the competency. The problem is the assessment given at the last part of the discussion. Kasi imagine, hindi ako nagkakamali, ang competency lang, the competency ay nandoon lamang sa understanding. Pero, ipinagawa niya ng essay, parang, I do not know, hindi ko po maalala, but inilagay niya doon sa creating, and then, tapos hindi pala creating, inilagay niya sa evaluating. Napakataas yung competency. Yung dimension na nilagay niya. Nung nagbigay siya ng exam, kasi during the discussion, ang tinuro niya lang sa bata is how to understand this basic text. Okay? So, she gave questions right after reading the text, and then right after that, there was this evaluation part. Okay? The students would evaluate the statements. Sabi ko, definitely, the learners could not answer the items because the competency and the assessment are not congruent. So that's why we have to remember that not all competencies are intended, competencies in the curriculum. The third part of test development and validation process would be prepare and review the table of specification. We were done with looking at the framework. We were done with number 2, how we're going to have this one. And then number 3, we're going to prepare and review the table of specification. Okay? So decide on the format of the test table of specification. Indicate the specifications of the test in the TOS. Include test format, number placement, percentage of items, and review the constructed TOS if all details are correctly placed based on the test frameworks. Okay? So, hindi ko na po masyadong i-deepen ng discussion po natin because everyone, I believe, is very familiar with table of specification, right? It's theoretical framework, it includes test objectives, content, Okay, test format. Okay, so why do we have to prepare tests? Okay, so it ensures match between the instructional objectives and what test captures. Okay, hindi naman po bago sa atin ang table of specification. Ang akin pong paniniwala, you've been having different kinds of LAC sessions about TOS, okay? About test construction, okay? Sa mga LAC session po ninyo per subject area, per grade level, you've been teaching table of specification. Pero my apologies if I have to emphasize this, table of specification is really important. Because again, aside from it matches the instructional objectives and the test captures the test, it ensures that the test constructor will not overlook details considered essential to a good test. Okay, so because we are considering here not only the questions but also the choices here, it makes test development easier and more efficient. It ensures that the test will sample only important content areas and processes. It is useful in planning and organized instruction. It offers an opportunity for teachers and students to clarify achievement expectation to sharpen. Okay, sir, when is the best time we could have or we have to prepare TOS? Kasi ang ginagawa naman talaga natin, we prepare table of specification before constructing a test. But sinasabi ng research, it's ideal if we're going to construct it before instruction begins. It would serve as a plan for the teachers. Example, you're going to have the first quarter, okay? You're going to have the table of specification. You're going to have the timeline. How many days are you going to allot for this specific topic, okay? And then you're going to walk through, you're going to browse the objectives for that certain quarter. You are going to identify which competencies can be given in a through test, which can be given in performance, and which can be given in through performance or written works. Okay, and then aside from having this, you could also decide if the test items that you will be given are appropriate to what is being required by the most essential learning competencies. Some teachers do a TOS after they have constructed. Pero syempre, hindi naman talaga dapat. Okay? Developing a test without a TOS could violate students' right to accurate, fair, and quality assessment. Yung pala yung principle nun, because they will not be given, because we are just thinking about what we have taught well and what we haven't taught well. Okay? Kasi parang ang mangyayari, we are just measuring ano ba yung naituro ko ng ayos, alin yung items na hindi ko naituro ng ayos. But the table of specification would tell the teachers that you have to consider those most essential learning competencies or the most essential learning competencies equal and relevant to students' learning. Okay? Test format could be selective, multiple choice, binary matching type, or it could be supply, completion, short answer, or essay. Okay? Remember, a good test uses all possible formats considering time and resources and the intent and limitation of the test. The most common format is the multiple choice, and it can be used in assessing all levels of cognitive behavior. But again, we are not boxing our teachers to just use or to have the multiple choice. You could have the varied types of tests. It could be selective or supply tests. Okay? So, sa susunod po nating mga training with the team of DepEd Dasmariñas, we're going to have designing test items na congruent po sa teams at congruent din po sa PISA. Okay? So, yun yung ilang pong mga nakaabang para po sa atin pong mga magiging training on assessment. Na dapat kasama ko yung team ng DepEd Dasmariñas, but they told ourselves na masyado po ito. Ito yung two-way na, yung one-way, just simple content, time, number of items, percent of items. That's it. Okay? When we say two-way, we're to categorize the items under remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. Okay? Third reminder. Plan your assessment so as not to fail your students, as assessment without a plan is a plan to to fail. Okay? So prepare a TOS as a guide in item writing and validation. Okay? Again, ideally, table of specification should be written prior to instruction, but definitely the number of days could not be determined, okay, in advance, okay? But you will be guided on how you're going to have your test item and which competencies, because you're going to have the mapping activity, you're going to identify which competencies should be given through examination, okay? Pero sinasabi po natin, ito po ay napakahalaga, we have to consider the most essential learning competencies set by Department of Education the moment we have or make our assessment. Hindi po pwedeng mas mataas ang assessment na ginawa po natin o yung ating test item na ginawa sa hinihingi po ng assessment, okay? Ng competency. If the competency is requiring, ang sabi po ng professor ng UP, I forgot the name of that professor, Sir Greg. Okay? Ang napansin niya raw po sa DepEd, hindi ko po alam kung gaano katotoo po ito, doon sa research daw, ayan, marami daw teacher, hindi daw napag-aralan mabuti yung competencies ng Research 1 at Research 2. Ano daw niya nalaman? Ano to ha, hindi ko masyadong makuha yung exact term niya, baka ma-misquote po ako. Kasi daw po, marami daw po na mga tasks, activities, either performance tasks, written works, or even tests na mas mataas pa doon sa hinihingi ng learning competencies, ng learning guide, ng CG, curriculum guide ng research. Parang sinasabi po nila, if I could still remember, sana sharp po yung memory ko, parang sinasabi niya na you are bombarding the mind of your learners in doing this, in doing this, in doing this. But if you're going to look at the competencies, these are just the competencies we are expecting from them to master. Ito lang yung hinihingi natin mula sa kanila. Ito lang inaasahan natin mula sa kanila. Okay? That's why it's very important in designing your test item. We have to make sure if the table of specification contains the content, the kind of questions we are going to craft, and gradually we have to look into the choices. Okay? Write and review test items with key feedbacking. Sunod na po tayo. Bilisan ko na lang po. Sorry po. So use the specification of tests as a guide to test development and validation. Follow the guidelines. Aim for authentic items. Provide key for immediate feedbacking. Aim for hacks so their answers are not easily found in books or the internet. Okay po. How do we increase the authenticity of the test? Okay, the keyword here is authenticity or authentic. Because we are not encouraging our teachers to copy and paste test items from the internet, because definitely we would like to make the test items contextualized based on how you present the lesson. Sir, paano po yan? We are just following what's written in the module. How could we give the long test? But the module is not giving us the long tests. Okay, so we teachers could design long test, quizzes, assessment based on how we're going to form the authenticity of the tests. Okay, example, which is more authentic and targets higher thinking skill. Okay, so definitely I could not ask you to answer the question. What is 15 plus 5? Okay, so in that case, the learner is going to choose among A, B, or C. Okay, second item. Okay, during their morning break, Romaline bought pancit canton worth 15 pesos and a glass of coconut juice worth 5 pesos. How much did Romaline spend for snacks? Okay? Siguro kung may time tayo, we could ask you to tell or through comment section which between A and 1 and 2. Okay? Pero madali sanang gawin yung 1 no? Pag nagmamadali, madali na yun. Ano? Pero let's try to find out. Okay, item 1. Let's try to analyze first the type of question. Okay? So, it's procedural because the learners are going to add. Application, because they're going to compute what they have learned from the module, from the discussion. Okay. But number 2, again, add and solve, apply, analyze, procedural, and metacognitive. Why it becomes metacognitive? Because you put it in the context. Okay? You let them not just apply, you let them analyze. Okay? Sige po. The same question. Which is more authentic and targets higher order thinking skills. Sabi po natin kanina, when we review or revise or review the test items, we have to consider that if the test items contain or possess the higher order thinking skill. During their morning break, ito yung kanina, Romalyn bought pancit canton worth 15 and a glass of coconut juice worth 5 pesos. I think they're familiar with pancit canton and coconut juice in the context of the learners. How much did Romalyn spend for her snacks? Okay, here. During your morning break, you bought pancit canton. What makes it different from item number 1? The use of pronoun your, which makes it personal. Okay, but again, if you remember, it's apply, analyze, procedural, metacognitive. Same. Apply, analyze, procedural, metacognitive. But what makes number 2 different from number 1? It's personal because of the use of your. That becomes authentic in nature. Okay? Next. This one. The same. During your morning break, you bought pancit canton worth 15 and a glass. How much did you spend for your snacks? Okay? Look at number 2. During your morning break, you bought blank worth blank and blank worth how much did you spend for your snacks? I do not know if there are still teachers. Ayan, thank you po sa mga sumasagot. Okay? Bagaman medyo late po yung ating reaction. Gawa po sa ating. So, ang number 2, kung po ito, medyo sabihin na natin ano to, higher talaga. Higher order thinking skill is being required here. Because in this case, kaya nga po I mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong because I just asked the supervisor of Lucena City during the seminar. Sabi ko, gano'n na ba? Kasi siguro dahil hindi ako magaling sa number. Nagot lang ako when these items were presented. Sabi ko, gano'n na pala. Pwede palang gano'n ang item. Yes, sir. It's not just about problem solving, but how they're going to create the problem and they solve it right after. Yun pala kako yung mga kalimitan ng competencies ng math. Okay po. Now, another, okay? During your morning break, you bought blank worth, okay? How much did you spend? But this one is higher. Construct your own word problem involving addition of whole numbers. You did not give anything, but you let them do. That's under creating. Okay? Next. Let's try to analyze yung last part na yan. Why it becomes higher. Kasi if you notice, number 1 is personal, authentic, metacognitive, procedural, personal, kasi nga po, you use the pronoun you, but this one is restricted, meaning to say, they will be just thinking about what could be used or what could be written in the spaces. But number 2 could be personal, authentic, and then extended. Kaya po kanina I mentioned the word extended because in this case, they will not just be putting all ideas together, but rather after putting all the ideas together, they're going to go beyond and they have to extend their knowledge. Okay. Ito yung kanina na binigay po natin, kaya we were not able to discuss in total. Classify, ang tanong pa rin natin, which is more authentic and assess higher order thinking skill. Ikakat ko po ito kasi forward na po, kasi baka po may na-violate na po akong karapatan ng ating mga teachers. Ano ba? Pagbigyan nyo lang po ako ng mga 5 minutes kasi medyo sayang po itong presentation na to. Which is set of solids. Noodles, canned goods, ito po yung choices natin. Okay? Let's compare it to the question number 2. Maria put the solids in their cabinet. Which set could this be? Okay? So, under siya ng understanding and conceptual because what we are measuring is if they learn the concepts. Pero yung number 2, it's understanding and metacognitive. Okay? Because it is contextual. Let's compare it to number 3. Okay? You put together the solids in your cabinet. Which set of objectives could this be? This is understanding, metacognitive, and personal because we put the learner in the item. Okay, let's compare it to number 4. Okay, you need to put the objects in your cabinet that have the same phase of matter. There is this condition. Which of the following objects should go together? Okay, yan po. So it's creating metacognitive and personal. Okay, both are personal, both are metacognitive, but we made it higher in terms of cognitive dimension. Instead of analyzing, they're going to create. Okay? Puputulin ko po dito yung presentation ko. Ano po? Hindi ko na po i-present yung susunod pa. Rules in item writing. Number 1, plan the specification before item writing. 2, construct the items following the given specification. Ensure the problem is clear and constructed in question form. Naniniwala po kami may mga teachers pa rin that they're still making the learning activity sheet. May mga teachers po tayo that they are still making long tests. There are teachers who are involved in the Moodle creation or development. There are still teachers who are part of the creation and development of learning activity sheet. These reminders or rules are very important. Ano po? Kailangan daw po use situations realistic to the learners. Okay? Tinuturo natin to sa K-3 teacher. Even in the selection of text, you should know when is the time or what grade level we could use the fantasy. Ito po yung mga unrealistic story. Kailan lang po. At anong grade level na kailangan alam na nila na ganito pala yan, hindi pala natakbo yung kabote, so on and so forth. Personalize the items to capture the learner's interest. Use a language comprehensible to the level of the learners. Okay? Kanina po I mentioned the role of language in assessment. Aside from there is no connection or there is no the language used in instruction and the language used in assessment do not jive. There are also times when the teacher use language which are not comprehensible in the assessment. Parang yung ginamit nilang terminologies during discussion are different from the language they are using in the assessment. Ayoko po sana humaba ang discussion. Ito yung nasa principle. Nasa principle po yun ng BICS and CALP, yung Basic Interpersonal Communication Skill and Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. You should know the language you are using in instruction. Make sure if you're going to make assessment, na-touch nila yung, sabi kasi ni teacher, sir, ayoko pong gamitin yung term na ano po, na congested. Kasi po mahirapan po ang bata. Kaya ang ginamit ko na lang po during our discussion is the synonym of the word congestion. Maganda yung goal ni teacher. Pero nagbigay siya ng exam, ang ginamit niya po ang congestion. Okay? Sir, hindi ko po ginamit, sir, yung term na photosynthesis, for instance. Baka po kasi mahirapan during our discussion. But when the teacher gives an assessment, nandun naman yung term na photosynthesis. Yung principle ng kasama din po yon sa aming magiging training. Actually, nagbubuo na kami. Meron din po tayo isang teacher. We're so thankful sa isang teacher natin. Nagpe-present siya gusto niyo mag-present ng isang topic. Kasi gagawin po natin sa ating training ng English. Pero ano po siya, yung may mga course. Itong course na to, saan mo teacher gusto kumpletohin yung iyong days. Okay? Keep the items gender and culture clear. Ito po ay napakahalaga. Okay, kaya po sa ating assessment, we have to make sure that the items are gender and culture fair. Sa ating pong mga teachers, yan po, arrange the options in the multiple choice items according to their value or length. Highlight negative words in the STEM. Avoid using double negatives. Avoid giving irrelevant information unless you test the same skill. Create original items including the stimulus. Avoid plagiarism. If literary test is needed, do paraphrasing, then acknowledge the source. Target, constructing items similar to international large-scale assessments. Kaya po, sa susunod po nating yung ano po natin, full-blown cascading of this. Kasi ano lang po to, isang presentation, it's more than, parang nasa 7 presentations po ito. This is just an introduction. We will cascade how the international large-scale assessment is done. Okay? Yun na lang po. Sige, ito lang po. Ang principle lang naman na sinasabi po natin, kasi we use the word various modalities, ang principle kasi ng assessment, regardless of learning, it's either offline or online, same TOS, test items, scoring, interpretation of results, and feedbacking. Okay? Why? Ayan, sorry po, nagkukan po ako. Ito ay example sa assessment natin. Ayan. What is the common issue in an online assessment? Integrity of assessment. Kaya po kanina pinauna ko na yon. Issue, test is prone to cheating. Ito po ay suggestion nila. Baka hindi ko alam kung makatulong. Sana makatulong po ito sa inyo. Possible solutions. Revisit and update the student manual. Rules on cheating and its consequences to include behavior in an online assessment. Ma'am Lay, perhaps we could use this in the manual that we are using for this kind of era. Kailangan daw makita natin yung student manual, and we have to emphasize cheating. Baka daw makatulong. Design well your test with clearly articulated purpose. Assess high-level thinking skills, so answers are not easily found in books or internet sources, or assess even with the books open. Okay? So para naman daw, kasi ang kailangan daw po ay we have to make it authentic. They could answer it through books, the modules, or the Moodle, but they could not directly copy and paste the answers. Okay? This would somehow lessen the issue on cheating or integrity of assessment. Shuffle items and choices if possible, so that students take different forms of test. Time the administration of the test is for answering. So ito medyo confused natin. Pero nagkaroon kasi tayo ng problema dito sa pagbigay ng time, but I won't mention anymore. Let students take the test with their camera on. Ito, medyo mahirap po ito. Disable access to browser. Mahirap din po ito. May mga, ito ay kay Dr. Balagtas. I think sa college, pwede po ito, yung mga sign honesty form. Hindi ko alam kung possible pa to. Sign a disclosure agreement. Pero, to make assessment in distance learning fair, make sure that whatever is the TOS and the test of those tested online, use the same for those tested online. Okay? Ang sinasabi niya lang po, i-close, mayroon pa siyang, nag-include ako ng quotation, pero kinat ko na po yung ilan. Ang sinasabi niya lang, sige sir, tinuturuan siya ng magulang, binabasa ng magulang or whatever. Ano daw yun? Dapat nga daw po malinaw, matibay yung pag-orient natin sa magulang. Ano yung role niya? Hanggang saan siya? Or kung talagang may ganung pangyayari, tingnan natin yung positive side nun. Kasi ano yun kung sir, ang function niya lang sumulat, ang talagang nagsasagot. Ang principle kasi ng learning, most probably, meron din siyang natutunan while writing. Kung hindi naman buo, at least he or she learns something. Okay? Sabi niya, hindi na rin po ako nagbigay ng ibang quotation. Ito kay, kanya na to. Highly contextualized. Sorry. Personalized in nature. In this time of health pandemic, be remembered by your students for being instrumental to their success and not to their failure. Teach them well and assess them accurately, so they will thank you forever. Okay, this line ay mula po sa nag-iisang queen ng assessment po ng PNU kay Dr. Marilyn Balagtas. I think this is where I would stop or pause for a while because it's 4:09. What shall I say? Thank you so much po. I do not know if Sir Jeff is still going to open the platform for the questions. If there are, if I could answer, I could answer. If I not, we would note those questions. I would note those questions, and then in the next wave of our training about assessment, we'll try to find the answers. Thank you. God bless po.
All right. So at this juncture, if you have questions, please post it in our chat box. No, we will try to entertain your questions or clarifications or queries. Ang ganda ng sinabi ni Ma'am Balagtas, Sir Noel, no, teach them well and assess them accurately. No, tamang-tama lalo na ngayon sa panahon ng pandemya kung saan ang mga bata natin ay nasa distance learning delivery modality. From Ma'am Janet Odog po, thank you, Sir Noel. Ayan. Gayon ang appreciation ni Ma'am Elena Ohena. Wow! So, Ma'am Oji. Alright. Mga katropa natin sa SPA to eh.
Yes. Yung mga SPA natin supportive yan, sir.
Oh no. Wala ako dyan. Ma'am, Ma'am Shilin yeah. Thank you po, Sir Noel. Ma'am Maylene Galagate. Ayan. Si Ma'am Esguera pala, kanina po yung sa Math is Fun. Ayan. Sinek ko po kanina sa Facebook. Friend ko kasi siya sa Facebook. Thank you, Sir Noel. So clear. At ang dami namin from Ma'am Esguera. Ma'am Cheryl. And sabi naman ni Ma'am Puli Carillo. Thank you, Sir Noel. Thank you, DepEd Dasma.
Siyempre,
Right,
mga
so
taga-North yan, sir. Mga taga-Dasma North yan. Yung mga...
sure, sorry for supportive talaga sila. Alright, learn a lot, sir. Thank you, sir. If you have questions again, clarifications, please feel free to post it po box. Pero palagay ko po ay talagang napakaklaro ng pagkakabigay po sa atin ng ating resource speaker. Wow, talagang pangmalakasan. Sabi ni Ma'am Tess, congratulations, brother, Sir Noel Ansiado, with matching clap, clap, clap. At ayan, thank you so much. Congrats, Sir Noel. Alright. For those naman po na hindi nakapag-attendance, again, nag-close po ang time na as we have reminded by the HRD, program specialist Sir Rent, no? At pero bukas po mag-open ito para naman po sa atin pong mga hindi nakapag-time in kahapon. Ayan, at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Ayan, so mukhang wala naman pong nagbibigay ng it's more of the happy learnings that they have gained from user Noel. Proud na proud si Ma'am Job Valdez. Talaga,
Yes.
very supportive si Ma'am Job. Ha? Kanina sabi niya, continue lang anak. Sabi niya, shout out kay virtual
Sir
hug,
Jeffrey,
Ma'am
kasi
Jobs.
ano ba, yun ang pinaka-challenge, ito yung pinaka-challenging na naging research, yung, pasensya na, nagiging emotional ako. Ito yung pinaka-challenging na naging presentation ko. Kasi, nagsaktong
I agree.
collapse yung laptop, as in, ito, ano ba yan? Pero, God is good po. Thank you so much po sa lahat.
Talagang naitawid po ng talagang with flying color. Congratulations from Ma'am from Ma'am G. Duran. Ayan lang. Nahirapan ako bigkasin yung pangalan niya. One of our school heads in the city of Dasmariñas. Thank you, Sir Noel. Very useful for teachers. Sayang lang po kulang ang oras. More like this pa po sana. Ayan. At katulad po na mention ni Sir Noel kanina, mukhang magkakaroon tayo talaga ng separate capacity building para sa ilan sa mga nabanggit ni Sir Noel in particular sa kanyang discussion kanina. Ayan, so thank you so much, sir, from Ma'am Valdez, Marilyn Alejo Valdez. Okay, very clear. Kahit po kayo naka-off cam siguro, makikinig na mabuti kasi ang ganda po ng boss at ang linaw po from Ma'am Annalyn. Sounds good. From Ma'am Emmy. Opo, from Dasma North. Kami po ay super proud, Nox. Ang daming bataan ni Sir Noel. Our former colleague in Dasma North, at Dasma. Alright. At gayon din po, ang ilan pa nakaka-appreciate sa ating mga manonood dito po sa school natin. Ito, may hashtag pa si ma'am. Teach them well, assess them accurately. Yung notable po yun. Naalala ko yung isang kanta. Teach them well, them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Wow. Parang papunta na dun yung papakanta na tayo. Thank you very much po, Sir Noel. Jeff from
Okay.
Arlene Bactin. Mahusay na researcher itong si ma'am. Alright. So far, it's more of the appreciation and thank you message, congratulations message to you, Sir Noel. At maraming salamat po sa inyong na-impart ngayong hapon. So sad, limited ang time, but thank you. Thank you, Sir Noel and Dasma from Mama Sol. Ayan, from Sir Randy, thank you. And ayan, congratulations from your PSDS in Cluster 5. Talaga naman, ayan. Okay, kasi totoo naman sir, no, ang dami nating pinagdaanan kanina. Akalain mo, na-end pa yung broadcast natin. Naka talaga siya as in cut, no, nawala talaga tayo sa air kanina. But, God is good at naka-survive naman tayo. Thank you so much po Sir Noel, Brother Ricky, Sir Jack, and Sir Ren. God bless from Ma'am Cathy De Torres Bautista Elementary School. Can we cordially have you as, as a research speaker in our upcoming inset because you're the legit EPS who can reach every teachers in SNES. Kudos po. From Ma'am Evangeline Tungala. Okay. Ang plano nila magkaroon ng in-service training. Lalo na ngayon po, we are gearing towards the end of the school year. Thank you po from Ma'am Sari Buhisan. Ayan. Congratulations and thank you. Maraming salamat po sa ating mga... Alright, so at this juncture, let us also acknowledge po our technical working committee, our technical working group, no, to make this capacity building possible. Once again, thank you so much, Sir Noel, for your time. Talaga po naipasa niyo po or na-impart niyo po sa amin ang inyo pong mga nais na ibahagi pertaining to the capacity building on assessment. So let us acknowledge and recognize the technical working group. Thank you so much to our officer in charge, Office of the Schools Division Superintendent, Sir Raimundo Cantonhos, SESO 6, our ASDS, Ma'am Bernadette Luna, our Chief in the Curriculum Implementation Division, Dr. Gemma Cortez, our proponents, Sir Tony Faustino Jr. and Sir Filio, our education program supervisors in science and Araling Panlipunan. Of course, thank you Sir Manny support ng HRD unit through the Senior Education Program Specialist Dr. Vanessa Barcarce, and of course to Sir Ren na nagko-comment pa siya para ma-remind tayo sa mga attendance po natin and evaluation, our education program specialist in HRD. And of course, attendance, registration, and evaluation, Dr. Cesar Chester Relieve, Sir Vic Villador, Ma'am Frageline Rafael, Ma'am Rowie Cariaga, Ma'am Catrice for for the virtual food. Kahapon pa ito, hindi ko pa na-edit. Ma'am Tess Manisio, intayin po namin yung food. Ma'am Telma. For the program invitation and certificates, Ma'am Lay and Ma'am Dory. And of course, for the ICT support and program materials, thank you so much, Sir Carl. Nagkaroon pa kami ng technical assistance sa paggamit ng StreamYard. Salamat po sa tutorial. And of course, Sir Julius Reyes, Sir Noel Ansiado, Sir Joel Salazar. For the process observation, Sir Michael, Dr. Jessie Layugan, Dr. John Nepomuceno. And for the members of the technical work, Dr. Crisaldo Belas, and of course, Dr. Emily Balanyo. Maraming salamat sa ating technical working group. And to officially close our 2 days capacity building on blended hybrid learning, let us call in our very supportive Chief of the Curriculum Implementation Division, no less than Dr. Gemma G. Cortez, for the closing message. Hi, sir. Hi, Ma'ams. Good afternoon po. Ayan, nakita natin ang kagandahan ni Ma'am. Magandang hapon po.
Yes, thank you so much, Doc Jeff. A pleasant afternoon to all of you. At the onset, I would like to congratulate and personally thank our two equally competent and high caliber speakers, Brother Rick Aguirre and our very own Education Program Supervisor in the City Schools Division of Dasmariñas, Mr. Noel Ansiado, our EPS in English. Thank you so much for the generosity of sharing your time, knowledge, and expertise, and your authentic insight and information to all our teachers and learning leaders relative to our session in this two-day webinar. I must say that it was an amazing webinar. Imagine we have learned two equally significant topics: the hybrid learning as alternative classroom teaching approach vis-a-vis alternative classroom preparation. And the other one is all about the review of the interim guidelines for assessment and grading system in light of the basic education learning continuity plan, but will play an important role in the preparation for a more challenging school year 2021-2022, where there will be gradual transition and adoption of different distance learning modalities. The COVID-19 pandemic has undoubtedly affected every aspect of our lives, particularly the education system. In the absence of many certainty, everyone is apprehensive on what will happen in the future, particularly in the coming school year. It is in this light why Dasmariñas, particularly the CID, looks at the different scenarios on how education will continue despite the crisis happen to us. So the Curriculum Implementation Division, in its effort to make education accessible and possible to all amidst pandemic, has taken into account all possible ways to ensure learning continuity. And one of these initiative or intervention is this capacity building for teachers and school leaders. So at this point, I would like to encourage everyone to continuously manifest and perform our mandate and selfless service to ensure that no children in Dasmariñas will left behind. Let us continue our passion and compassion towards our work. And as said in one quotation about collaboration, and I quote, "Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much." Simply mean that we in DEP at Dasma really need to work hand in hand to achieve our dream to all Batang Dasmarineño. Let us apply and share what we have learned in this two-day webinar, and rest assured that DepEd Dasmariñas, particularly the top management and staff, are always here to support and work with you. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to personally thank all of you, my dearest teachers and school heads, who in one way or another had helped DepEd Dasmariñas from conceptualizing, implementing until such time that all our programs and projects are accomplished. Once again, good afternoon. Thank you so much and God bless us all.
Thank you so much, Teacher Cortez, for that very heartfelt message to our teachers. Talaga naman pong babaunin pong mga kaguruan na sa Sabado at Linggo ang mga natutunan at ito po ay kanilang i-apply sa araw-araw na pagtuturo ngayon sa distance learning delivery modality. Thank you so much, Ma'am Cortez. And at this juncture, it is but right to acknowledge and to recognize also the presence of the Lord, and let us have the closing prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, as we end this program, we want to give honor to you. Thank you, Lord, for those things you have done today. Thank you for your love that you have revealed to us, and for the love that we share together as your body. May you bless each person who took the time to gather here today, and let your hand of protection be on them throughout the rest of the week. Done here, come to fusion, and let it all be for your glory. Bless each of us and keep us safe until we are able to gather together again. We pray for all the words that you have sown into our hearts. Watch over them, protect them. May they take root and wonderful things, things of beauty and great blessings to many. And as we leave this place, that you walk with us May we be alert to your promptings and live in your endless love. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory in this age and forevermore. Glory be to the Father, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. And of course, our evaluation link. For the evaluation, please click edit your response. We will use the same QR code and the same link for the evaluation. But this time, select the evaluation button, and of course, evaluate for day 2. Bukas naman po ulit para sa mga hindi nakapag-evaluate po kahapon. Pa kung ilan sa mga supervisors natin na hindi din nakapag-evaluate katulad ng maraming guro. At para po mabigyan ng pagkakataon na time in ulit for day 1 tomorrow po, with the assistance of our HRD unit. Thank you, Sir Ren, for opening once again tomorrow the link for day 1. God bless us all. Alam kong marami pa ang magluluto at magpe-prepare ng kanilang hapunan. At stay safe po tayong lahat. Always wear your mask and keep your physical distancing. God bless us all.